Where do we start? Do you want to? Let's start with the easiest one, Project Veritas. It's a fun discussion, and that way, when we get to the stuff that I haven't been able to do my homework on, you can carry the conversation. So, for anybody who doesn't know, James O'Keefe, investigative journalist, or depending on who you ask, extreme right-wing propagandist. James O'Keefe does the investigative journalism that I grew up watching on 60 Minutes, undercover stuff, recording conversations, actual news. His target is mainstream media because of their anti-Trump left-wing bias. To my knowledge, he's never done anything outright wrong. Never. There was one story about him editing in him dressed like a pimp in one of the videos way back in the day about Acorn. I don't know about that, although if that's true, maybe he learned from his mistakes. But by and large, recently, accurate reporting. Apparently, he had either the dial-in code to the editorial meetings at CNN for the last couple of months, or he had someone from the inside recording. We don't know the details, but we know that he dialed into the conference call this morning or yesterday, live streamed it saying, I've recorded all of these meetings for the last 2 months, tongue-in-cheek jabbing Zucker, saying, do you still consider yourself to be the most trusted name in news? And I'm going to be releasing these recordings over the month of December. CNN goes to Twitter and says, we've advised law enforcement you may have committed a felony. So I presume, Robert, they are alluding to the single party or two-party consent state where, for those of you who don't know, if you are ever about to record a conversation or make a video, double check if you are in a one-party or two-party consent state. If you're in a two-party consent state, everybody who's a party to that meeting has to consent to the recording. One party means that if you are a party or have permission of one of the parties, you can record. From what I understand, under no circumstances can you eavesdrop and wiretap without a warrant into a conversation in which you're not a party. I think that's the good overview. Do you think that's the angle that CNN is getting at with this accusation threat?
I don't know why they're making that. They're assuming, I guess, that nobody gave him authority that was a party, because Georgia's a one-party state. You can almost guarantee. He has not been, Project Veritas, to my knowledge, has never been successfully sued. And they have received more retractions and corrections from others in making accusations about them than any independent investigative journalist or media organization in the country. I think it currently runs 344, 345 retractions that they have on their Hall of Retraction, their Hall of Fame, Hall of Shame for journalists. So a lot of accusations are made about him, but most of those people end up having to retract or correct those. And so he's also very, has a lot of lawyers involved in advising him all the way through the process. So there's almost no chance he did anything illegal. So the CNN is just fishing and hoping. What they're really trying to do is out whoever it was that gave him authority that was in that meeting.
Well, there's that, and knowing what I know now and being cynical and jaded, or weaponizing the prosecutorial process, and maybe he did nothing wrong, but get the law enforcement after him with whatever inconveniences that entails. Two things. Well, the one thing about the retractions, I saw their wall of retractions. Some are good retractions, and others are sort of, they would, if there's a wall of retraction shame, they would have smaller portions on it than others. Sure. But the question about the two-party, one-party consent state, Georgia's a one-party consent state. If it were New York's a one-party consent state as well. The issue would become if there were multiple parties to the suit and some of whom were either on a conference call in a two-party consent state. Technically, then you could have an issue?
No, generally not. Because if it's a call between states, one party rules the rule. So you have to, if the call is being made from a two-party state where everybody on the call is a two-party state, then the two-party rule applies. But generally, no two-party rule has to apply unless everybody on the call is in a two-party state, is the usual protocol.
Okay, so it's an amazing thing. We'll see where it goes. I thought the threat was a blank of a threat, almost sort of, I would say, an embarrassment to people who know the law, a stretch to people who might have a limited understanding of the law. Okay, that's very interesting. That about covers it. I don't think there's any legal nuance to that. The one thing I was wondering, I suspect it might have been the insider who was doing the recording in any event, and not even James O'Keefe as an outsider, in which case there's no case whatsoever as to what he did when he live streamed. Could that qualify as a felony if it's a two-party consent state? I mean, they're based in Georgia, but they have offices in New York. So I don't know where
both of those states are one-party states. So the core of it is what it all comes down to a certain degree is, do you have a reasonable expectation of privacy in the call? And so if you're in a one-party state, or people who are listening in a one-party state, can you say you have a reasonable expectation that no one's recording unless everyone had prior consent? Probably not. So I think that they're fishing on that. I think it was just a punitive reaction of anger and pique because they got exposed again because he's been able to infiltrate them so easily, so consistently. It has agitated them to a great degree.
Now, innocently, like they're doing a conference call. They know someone might be recording it. They might be recording it themselves. But we saw this with Emmett Sullivan in the Flynn hearing, where they aired on the internet, but said that nobody could reproduce it under penalty of contempt or something.
Right. That's just because it's a judicial rule. Because the theory is that they're allowing for public access, but not recording. And so that when you're listening live, that's public access. Anything else is recording. And that's just because it's a judicial process that's subject to judicial rules. There's no universal law on that whatsoever. I mean, you'd have to allege copyright or something like that. You can't really allege that in a conversation in most cases.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this then. But I thought it was sort of not a shot in the dark, but just a shot of desperation. Maxim Perkinkov said, "What is the sixth letter of the alphabet?" in a super chat I missed a while back. Okay.